House Bill 794. The purpose of this bill is to provide legislative oversight to the Department of Education regarding the growing incidences of public school students leaving class in order to protest. I'm passing out now news media articles about students doing that, student walkouts and protests in Idaho during school hours in just the last 45 to 60 days. And while we recognize the First Amendment right to protest and to use political speech by all students, it's a waste of taxpayer money for students to leave their classrooms to do so. Students are free to protest at any other time. In response, this bill advocates that student walkouts and absence from the classroom in order to protest shall be considered as an unexcused absence for the day, and such absences will be reported to the Superintendent of Public Instruction and to the legislature. And in the handouts, I want to point out to you two important issues and draw your attention to two points there, that we're not just talking about a few kids walking out here and there or being absent from school, but according to the articles, this is happening hundreds at a time. There's like a couple hundred, 1 to 200 kids just leaving school to go protest. And secondly, there's remarks there by one of the school administrators that this is extremely disruptive to the education process. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tanner, what's the difference between a protest and a First Amendment peaceful assemblage?
Representative Tanner.
Chairman, Representative Mathias, I'm not sure. If you know, I would like to hear.
Chairman Hawkins.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Tanner, I'm just have a question concerning parental rights. And as it is now, the parent can say so many absences are excused. The school board, if they go over the excused absences, then they have to go before the school board and explain why. But if a parent decides that it's okay and they feel like their kid's going to learn more about government and the proper way to address their concerns about something that's going on in the community, is this in your opinion, is this a step on parental rights if they agree with this, or it seems like the school board is, you're giving the school board more autonomy than they have now, and I don't believe that should be. But anyway, address that issue for me so to see how you wrap your mind around that.
Representative Tanner.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Representative Gardner, thank you. I think you asked a similar kind of question last time, and I don't think that there is an excused absence in any of the school districts in Idaho for parents to excuse their students to go out and protest or to walk out of class. There are excused absences for sick, being sick, or if they have a doctor's appointment, or there's a family emergency, a death in the family, attend a funeral, those sorts of things. But there's nothing for parents excusing their kids just to go out to walk out and protest. So I don't think that's defined. And so we're defining that here.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a comment that maybe you, Representative Tanner, anyone who testifies can clarify for me, but in conversations with my school district, it's my understanding that the fundamental concept of what is excused or not is dependent on the parent. If a parent knows where the student is and says, that's okay, that is by definition an excused absence. And if the parent does not know where the student is and is not okay with that, that is an unexcused absence. So I have concerns about the state sticking its nose in between that parent-child school relationship.
Representative Tanner, I think that was a comment more than a question. Representative Nelson.
Chairman, Representative Tanner, I think it's paraphrased the same as when this came through the first time. In my history, I've been a local Republican Central Committee member for a long time, and we even sponsored a group of young Republicans that were part of the high school. Anything you do in politics would be to present your side of the issue is a bit of a protest or an argument. My concern, the way this is written, is any kids that get involved politically at all and want excused to go to something, whether it's in this building or something else, and there's any hint of a position politically, if you will, this is going to turn their absence into an unexcused absence.
Chairman, may I respond to that?
Yes, you may, Representative.
Yes, thank you, Representative Nelson. I think the difference is that what you're describing is something that's like an organized, group, going outside the classroom, to do some research, to visit, an assembly that is, or like a political, like maybe something coming here, to see what happens here. It's not what, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about kids just getting up and walking out, or just counting themselves absent from school, just, not going to class in order to do these things. Myself, growing up, going to school, I've always appreciated, the classes I've always appreciated the most are those classes where multiple points of view were presented, where the instructor was unbiased, that he's presented, a perspective from one point of view and a perspective from another point of view, and he himself was neutral, and he tried to stimulate, critical thinking, like hear from this point of view, hear from the other point of view. That's one thing, and I would encourage that. I would encourage any club that does that, on campus, but that's not what we're talking about here.
We are talking about unexcused absences, and I guess that a lot's changed in the classroom since I've been in school. That's been a minute ago. We couldn't go anywhere without permission from parents, whether it was a field trip or anything. I guess that's changed quite a bit, but we will go to testimony.
Our first testifier will be by telephone, Sierra Clark.
Hi, my name is Sierra Clark, and I am from District 25. So I serve as the chair for Moms for Liberty in Twin Falls County, and I am here in support of this bill. This bill addresses a simple issue: how schools mark absences when students leave for political protest or similar activities. So this bill makes clear that these absences are unexcused, and I think that is reasonable. Excused absences are typically for illness, family emergency, or school-approved activities, and leaving class for political activity is voluntary and should be treated consistently. This bill does not restrict free speech, and students are still free to express their views. So this bill sets clear rules and keeps attendance consistent across the schools. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Our next testifier will be Nolan Jarvis, in person.
Hi, I'm Nolan Jarvis. I'm from District 4. Good morning. In your consideration of this bill, I would like to bring up a saying one of my best friends came up with when we were in high school. Without your support, schools fall short. This simple, seemingly obvious phrase became a rallying cry for hundreds of our classmates when we organized a walkout in 2023. When the Kootenai County GOP attempted to fail the CDA district levy, our lives as students were put at risk. Sports, arts, electives, dual enrollment were all threatened by the failure of the levy. The school's incredible staff would be cut, and we would lose the block schedule that gave us so many opportunities. My friends and I organized a walkout around this issue, and hundreds of students walked out with us. Our walkout was not disruptive. It was 30 minutes before the end of the school day. Instead, we showed that students cared about our futures and the world around us. We continued organizing, educating students, and registering voters, and the levy passed. Despite this, our walkout would not have been as successful without the district allowing us to voice our opinion without penalty. If the district imposed attendance penalties on students walking out, our action would have had a lot less attendance and impact. By mandating that districts impose such penalties, the legislature is directly attacking student voices. Furthermore, when adult members of the community threatened to counter-protest our student walkout, it was only the district's support for our right to protest that allowed us to do so safely. The presence of campus security ensured student safety and deterred these counter-protesters. This bill contains no language regarding this aspect of the issue, and a school incentivized to keep students in class would not provide security in this way. No amount of big government will stop student movements, however. With the passage of this bill, student action will happen regardless and unsafely. Without support, schools fall short. This includes and requires support for students, not silencing their voices. Supporting schools does not look like the levy funding system. It does not look like quote-unquote school choice, and it definitely does not look like this bill. Students will continue to speak whether you want them to or not, and you cannot claim to support students when you punish them for doing so. I urge you not to pass House Bill 794.
Thank you for being right on time. Do we have any questions? Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Olivia Luna.
I'm Olivia Luna. I'm in District 17. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Olivia Luna. I'm a lifelong Idahoan, and I'm here representing Babe Vote as the president. Babe Vote is a nonpartisan nonprofit that helps register people to vote and encourages civic engagement on campuses across the state. And part of this civic engagement is encouraging them when they want to peacefully exercise their First Amendment rights. This reflects a rich history of students participating in civil society, which did not start in Idaho with Babe Vote. Students have been at the forefront of important social movements for decades. The Berkeley Free Speech Movement in 1964, the East LA walkouts in 1968, and notably the public school in Iowa where students wore armbands to protest the Vietnam War in 1969, leading to the Supreme Court's decision on Tinker versus Des Moines, where Justice Abe Fortas found that, quote, it can hardly be argued that students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. So besides the legal battle that this bill would bring about if signed into law, we are concerned with the message it would send to young Idahoans. Most high school students that this bill would target aren't even old enough to vote, and still decisions are made that dictate their lives every single day, hence the conversation that we're having right now. And they should have the right to voice in some capacity without getting disproportionately punished or have their school's funding hanging over their heads just by voicing these opinions. And even then, there's no mechanism in the bill for how schools or school districts are even supposed to know what the purpose of the absence is. If a student has to leave school for another reason at the same time as a walkout, why should they be punished? In any case, these students are the future of Idaho, and if we teach them that civic engagement is something to be punished, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Please oppose the bill.
Representative Galaviz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Luna, for being here. I'm curious if some handouts were given right before this hearing and talked about like organized protests or walkout in different parts of the state. You said that you were with Babe Vote. Is Babe Vote organizing, I guess, directly speaking, some of the protests and walkouts that we're seeing here in the headlines?
Ms. Luna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Galaviz, thank you for the question. So I don't know what headlines are on your handouts, but a lot of the walkouts that we've seen around the state over these last couple months have had Babe Vote students involved, but we do not directly organize these events. What does happen, though, is students come to Babe Vote when they have like logistic concerns or they need more resources, but I would say ultimately what's important to note is that these students know what's affecting their communities. They know that they want to advocate for them, and they know what kind of like social movements and what kind of things like walkouts are most effective to get their message across.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next person will be Nathan Zimmerman, District 21.
I am a fifth-generation Idahoan, and I'm from District 21, and I'm currently a freshman at Boise State University, and I rise today in opposition of House Bill 794. Since the 7th grade, I've been a volunteer for the Idaho Special Olympics, and that experience has given me a passion for inclusion and civic engagement. This passion didn't stop when I went to high school, when my friends and I organized a walkout my senior year last year. In my experience, the students that are most passionate about inclusion and civic engagement are also the students that are most passionate about their education. I graduated top of my class, and in accordance with this principle, we organized our walkout 20 minutes before the end of the school day. While I believe this bill to be a threat to the fundamental rights to students, there are two big things that I find issue with in the bill text. The first is in Section 2B, which removes excused absences for participation with, quote, groups known to engage in political protests. As I mentioned before, I volunteered with the Idaho Special Olympics, and I received excused absences to go do that volunteer work. Yet the Idaho Special Olympics and the National Special Olympics has on occasion in its history organize political demonstrations that advocate for inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities. I asked the question, would the Special Olympics fall into this category? Or would other organizations that also on occasion organize around issues they care about fall into this category? Would a student under this bill no longer receive an excused absence for volunteer work related to the Special Olympics simply because this bill is extremely vague? The second point that I find issue with is in subsection 3, where it says that absences related to political action count as a full day absence, harming the school's average daily attendance. A couple months before our walkout, I had the opportunity to go to Italy with my family, and this was a great, fun experience. Unfortunately, we flew out the Friday before Thanksgiving break, so I got called out 20 minutes before the end of the school day. I'm concerned that under this bill, if this bill was in effect my senior year, I would have received a full, unexcused absence, harming my school's average daily attendance for participating in civic engagement, but not for flying to Italy for the same amount of missed class. It is for those reasons that I stand in opposition, and I stand for any questions.
Representative Gallavy.
Thank you for being here. When you were talking about that, you had excused absences, for volunteer work that you were doing, but then mentioned that there were protests or demonstrations, surrounding that same organization. Do you know, because attendance is a topic we're also discussing here with what is excused, what is unexcused, and how that's handled. Can you talk to me about when there were demonstrations or protests? Do you know how the attendance was handled if you were part of that group?
Chairman Hawkins, Representative. I went to a high school in Meridian under the West Ada School District, so I can only speak to that school district. But there were 3 categories of attendance. There was an unexcused absence, which is where your parent would call you and say, oh, you're going to lunch with grandpa or something like that. There was a truancy where there was no parent call, and then there was an excused absence, which were usually things like field trips, etc. So for the instance of walkouts, myself, I was 18 at the time of the walkout, so I was able to call myself out, and I received an unexcused absence for the last period of the day. But many of the students were not 18 and had their parents call them out, receiving an unexcused absence for the day. I think it's important to note that never in my experience have I seen a walkout being organized or condoned by the school itself, so there has never been a case that I have seen where the school has granted excused absences to students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Christina Hardy.
My name is Christina Hardy. I live in District 23. I'm representing myself as a parent of a public school student and a taxpayer. I'm in support of House Bill 794, which prohibits excused absences for students participating in the organized political walkouts. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. Several school districts have recently been afflicted with planned student walkouts during class time. Staff are compelled to drop their regular responsibilities in order to supervise. Teachers are unable to proceed with their carefully crafted lessons. When districts allow parental verification to effectively excuse these activities, it wastes valuable time and resources, impacting the learning of all the students. I believe school boards and administrators need clear direction from the state on this matter so that they know how to best manage these situations. When we had the school bathroom issue, my school district, and likely many others, waited to act until they had direction through legislation from the state. In this case, they may fear interfering with free speech rights. This bill helps school boards understand that as a state, we do not condone protests during instructional time, while also showing school districts how they should manage them if they occur. I think this sends a clear message, but it is a light touch because it doesn't outright ban anything. It indirectly forces selective frequency of the undesirable behavior, that being the wasted valuable time. I think most parents would agree that we are not looking to our public schools to turn our kids into activists. It is very reasonable to simply remove attendance for the day as a way to de-incentivize this behavior. This protects instructional time, prevents indirect promotion of political ideologies, and gives school boards the statewide guidance they need. It protects free speech outside the school day while prioritizing education inside it. Good bill. Green light should pass.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hardy, I think you just heard the last testifier. Could you tell us how you feel about the dilemma that we're in, being asked to legitimize a 20-minute early departure to go to Italy, but punish a 20-minute early departure to go out and exercise a First Amendment right?
Ms. Hardy.
I think what would happen is that parents and students, if they're 18, then have to decide how often they can do that. So it doesn't outright ban this practice, because you just can't have it every week. You can't have it every month without essentially being penalized and possibly not passing your classes. So I don't think it's a problem that I could go ahead and excuse my child for going on a family trip, but then I'm going to have to decide whether or not we can have him miss other things. For example, I'm sorry, I don't think you can participate in this protest during school. Why don't you plan it for right after the bell? Do it then. And then you're not disrupting the regular class day. I think this is a light touch, and I think it's reasonable.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Cruz Beezer.
Hello, my name is Cruz Beezer, and I'm from District 17. I'm in opposition of this bill because I think, as a student who has led and participated in walkouts in the previous month, I have participated in one walkout at South Junior High. We left school in the last 20 minutes of the day, as per usual for clearly other walkouts, and we made sure we were not in disruption of other classes, as at our school, the last 20 minutes of the day are during a period called advisory, which is more of a catch up on late work or missed work period. And the students who left and walked out during this period, we were made sure to be quiet and slowly leave to not disrupt the students who were unable to or did not want to participate in the walkout. This bill contradicts itself with past state law. In Title 6-7, Chapter 53, it says, no employee of a state department covered by this act shall participate in the nonpartisan activities of a civic, community, social, labor, or professional organization or of a similar organization. When you penalize students for walking out, giving them a tardy or unexcused absence, the attendance secretary at the school is directly connecting themselves with an outside political movement. When you are connected with a political movement that clearly is expressing political beliefs, you are therefore showing even slightly that you are not neutral, completely neutral, as you should be as a school. So this bill contradicts itself as also ruining the neutrality and efficiency and integrity of the employees' administration of the state functions. I'm in opposition of this bill, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Galaviz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for being here today, Cruz. Just curious, did you have a call from a parent or guardian to be excused for your absence here today from school?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Representative. Yes, I did.
Follow up?
Follow up.
So just to clarify, you have the support of your parent or guardian to be here and express your opinion on this topic here today?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Beezer, I apologize for passing over the college students and asking a junior high student this question, but I keep hearing you all say the same thing. You keep saying that we did this during the last 20 minutes of the school day or the last 30 minutes of the school day. Why do you do it during the last 20 or 30 minutes of the school day? Why is that a thing?
All right, thank you, Chairman. For our school at South Junior High, we chose the last 20 minutes because it's less of an instructional period where teachers are teaching their students a subject, and it's more of a period to catch up on work that you might have missed in the past couple of weeks, or work that is missing, or if you need to work on an essay, it's less of an instructional period and more of a free period to complete work. So we chose the last 20 minutes because the students that have completed all their work, have no late work, and have maintained good grades throughout the entire semester. That's why we chose that, because the students that they could express their free beliefs while also not penalizing themselves in an educational manner.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Jen Beezer.
Well, I didn't expect to get teary in Education Committee, but that's my kid. I'm Jen Beezer. I live in Boise, and I'm here representing myself. And I'm obviously a very proud parent of a lifelong Idahoan. And I'm here opposing this bill, and maybe his testimony is where the mic drop should be. I have lots of opportunities to be proud of my son. One came just a few weeks ago when he helped organize a walkout because a family in our community in his school district was impacted by something they felt was unjust, and they wanted to support each other by protesting. I was very proud that day, and I'm very proud this day too. I did want to point out a couple of things that I find contradictory in the language of the statement of purpose, juxtaposed to what I found on the State Board of Education for Idaho's website, quoting that the civics education in Idaho empowers learners to understand and actively participate in our democratic institutions. And I consider what Cruz just did here today a part of those actively participating activities in our democratic institutions. And I also include him walking out in protest, actively participating in democratic institutions. Additionally, this absolutely stands against my God-given right as a mother. My right as his mother is to excuse him or take him away from school at any time for any reason. There have been times in our history as a family that I have excused my kids from school without telling the school why. And that is my right. And I don't think that this would pass muster for First Amendment violations, and I don't think it passes muster for parental rights, which this body has overwhelmingly always supported. So please vote no. I'll stand for any questions.
Representative Gardner.
Chairman and ma'am, my question is, I assume, but can you tell me if your school and school board has a policy that covers excused absences, that you only get so many school excused absences and then you have to go before the school board?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Garner, I have to admit that I don't know for sure. We're in Boise School District. I assume that there is a policy. I would also just further state, I would go to the mattress in front of the school board. Any committee or any institution that wants to fight me on this. So also I would just add, one protest in a school year is not likely to break the totality of any of those rules. So I haven't looked to see what those policies are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next testifier will be Quinn Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. For the record, my name is Quinn Perry, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Idaho School Boards Association. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here in opposition to this legislation. Let me be clear at the outset. We are not here because we believe that students who leave school to participate in a political protest should be counted as present, and the good news is that they are not. Under existing policy and practice, if a student leaves school property or is not in the instructional setting where they are expected to be, they are marked absent or truant. That is already the law and the reality in our public schools. This bill is unnecessary, and more importantly, it creates serious practical and legal concerns. First, school administrators do not have the ability to police student behavior once a student leaves campus. If a student is absent for the day, administrators cannot reasonably determine whether the absence was for a political protest, a medical appointment, or another reason unless their parents excuse them. Requiring administrators to determine the political nature of a student's absence places them in an impossible situation and creating an unworkable enforcement standard. Second, this legislation interferes with parental rights. When a parent calls to excuse their child's absence, schools do not interrogate them about the reason beyond what is required by district policy, and that is because we trust parents. This bill would effectively require schools to question families about whether their child is engaging in protected political activity or not. Third, regardless of whether a student's absence is excused or unexcused, the student is still absent. That absence still counts against the school's average daily attendance for funding purposes. There is no loophole being exploited, and schools do not financially benefit from students leaving to participate in a political protest. Finally, I won't go into Tinker v. Des Moines, but schools have a right to allow students to participate in political protests so long as it does not disrupt or materially disrupt the learning of the students. In short, this bill solves no existing problem. Students who leave to protest are already counted as absence, but it does create a new administrative burden, creates enforcement problems, infringes on parental rights, and entangles schools in monitoring constitutionally protected activity. And for these reasons, we would ask the committee to vote no on this bill.
Representative Galaviz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Perry, for being here. I guess I know you said briefly you weren't going to go into Tinker v. Des Moines, and I was looking forward to maybe a few questions with the bill sponsor, but since you brought it up, the Supreme Court's ruling protects the student's ability to execute their free speech. I am curious how this impacts schools because the ruling created this substantial disruption test, and where we measure how a student leaves the building or what they're doing to disrupt others. So given that there's this tension here today around the reasons why they're leaving, even if they have parental consent, do you feel like this legislation is going to put school districts in a pickle for allowing and upholding the Supreme Court ruling via Tinker, but still having to, mark absence for a student quietly leaving a room, even with parent permission, if that makes sense?
Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Galaviz. The Tinker case, like the Supreme Court's ruling was students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Where schools can infringe on that right, for lack of a better word, is if it materially is disrupting the educational environment or process. So in the Tinker case, they wore black armbands at school, and that was not considered materially disruptive to the educational process. For students to quietly walk out or exit, that is constitutionally protected, but students are marked as absent or truant if they're not excused by their parent. So I do think this puts school officials in a position where they're having to monitor constitutionally protected speech. So I do think that this has legally questionable areas for school officials and will arguably create constitutional problems if this becomes law.
For just a quick follow-up, I think you mentioned it, but just for clarifying, excused absence, unexcused absence, truant, all of it counts the same for a school district when they're reporting ADA. There's no difference if a parent approves it or not. An absence is an absence for ADA purpose.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Galaviz, you are correct. So when we talk about excused versus unexcused absences, that counts against the district's policy at how many classes you need to attend in order to maintain academic credit or eligibility in athletics or things like that. If a student is absent and it's excused or unexcused or truant and nobody knows where they are and they're trying to figure it out, that all counts against the school district's average daily attendance. So, thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Amanda Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Amanda Reed. I live in District 17. I work for the Idaho chapter of the Sierra Club, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of our over 13,000 members and supporters across the state of Idaho, and dozens of public high school students who I work with through our youth engagement program, the Idaho Climate Justice League, who could not make it here today because they had to prioritize their studies during this busy time. We're urging you all to vote no on House Bill 794. Our youth program supports students to grow their leadership and civic engagement skills around environmental issues that they care about and that have an impact on their lives. They engage with all the tools in our democracy's toolbox, including holding community dialogues, meeting with decision makers, submitting written comments, testifying at hearings, writing letters to the editor in the press, sharing educational resources on social media, and yes, also organizing peaceful protests. House Bill 794 would have a chilling effect on all of these constitutionally protected activities for young people in our state, both during and outside of school hours. By tracking and punishing students who choose to participate in First Amendment activities during the school day, with the permission of their parents, I'll add, when many important hearings, demonstrations, and policy forums take place, such as the one we're in right now, you're signaling to them that their voices don't matter and their rights to free speech and assembly are limited. And you risk quelling youth activism and civic engagement in general, which is a hallmark of our country's democracy. The reality is that when young people feel so strongly about political issue that they choose to miss class and fall a bit behind, they're not just trying to ditch school and waste taxpayer dollars, they're trying to share their voice and create positive change in their community. Please don't discourage youth engagement. Encourage them, engage them, listen to them, to your next generation of voters. Only good can come for that. So with that, on behalf of our organization, I ask you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
With that, Representative Tanner, Representative Galvez.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. I'm curious if you would please respond to the question that I asked Ms. Perry earlier. I'm concerned about the tension this is going to put school districts in with trying to comply with the Tinker v. Des Moines case that specifically addresses student protest, and specifically during the school day. And it created that disruption test, and that their First Amendment right is protected as long as it is peaceful, non-disruptive, and does not interfere with class operations. So in the testimony that we heard, where a student left 20 minutes early from an advisory course with parent permission, quietly walks out, that would be supported. That would be supported via the Supreme Court case. So can you talk to me a little bit about where your legislation wrestles with the existing law?
Representative Tanner.
I'd have to do more research on Tinker. I don't know that it would be supported. I'm hearing that that's what you're saying, that it does. I'd be surprised that it is, but yeah.
For I guess a quick follow-up. So you're saying that you recognize that the legislation that you've brought before us today is potentially in conflict with that Supreme Court ruling?
No, Mr.
Chairman, through the chair.
Chairman and Representative Galvez, I'm saying I don't know that because I'd have to be more familiar with Tinker.
I'll just take a moment before you do your closing, and if I'm understanding the Supreme Court case properly, the Supreme Court ruled on the fact that students and teachers do not lose their First Amendment rights at the gate of the school. That is key on behavior inside the school. And the case was ruled on them wearing armbands in protest, and they had a right to do that. We are talking about activity, and I'm not saying that students can say whatever they want. They can, but we are talking about activities that when they leave the school before the school day is over. I don't think the case would apply at all, my personal view, because that case was ruled on at the gates of the school.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to respond to some of the comments, and again, I thank all the people who came in and participated. There's nothing in this legislation that restricts free speech. It simply says that if you want to protest, if you want to walk out of class, that's just going to be considered an unexcused absence. It doesn't restrict parental rights. For withdrawing, allowing one of their children or children to be removed to school for the purpose of protesting or free speech. It's just how will it be counted? It'll be counted as an unexcused absence. I appreciate the comments by Ms. Hardy and Ms. Clark in that, and I heard from many other taxpayers and constituents in my district about this issue, concern about this. So it's not like this is just happening once here, once there. There's a lot of concern about this, and also about the last 20 minutes. That seemed to come up, as like that was the norm. If I could draw your attention to this handout that I gave you here, it says here that the walkout began at 12:20 p.m. and it was over 100 students from Skyline High School. So it's not just a few, and it's not always at the end of the day. And by the way, I appreciated the comments from Mr. Beazer. It sounds like those last 20 minutes are very important 20 minutes, finding out what you've missed and what you need to get caught up on. That sounds like that's important part of the instructional part of the day. Again, this is not silencing any voices. You can express your opinion in your classroom, however the teacher chooses to manage their classroom. It doesn't silence anybody. It just says you can't get up and walk out during the day to go protest.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hotstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like this bill. I had not looked into that Tinker versus Des Moines, but it's a dramatically different situation. And as you mentioned schoolhouse gate. I think that's essential. In looking at part of that Tinker versus Des Moines, student speech is protected unless it would materially and substantially disrupt the work and discipline of the school. Getting up and walking out mid-school day is a disruption. And we already see children have too many disruptions going on right now, but to have them as some political, tool or cog for us as adults in any political movement, I don't care if you're Trump or Biden, these children need to be in school learning. And we are already dealing with issues in learning as we speak. And we're talking about the budgets and how much it costs and how much more should we pay. Meanwhile, you look at some of the statistics and about half of our children can't read at grade level and less can do math at grade level. Those are concerning things. And when we have large groups of children walking out to protest, many times probably for what they don't understand or what they've been told without critical thinking itself, there's some big issues there. And I think we need to focus on what we need to focus, and that's keeping the kids in the school learning, and they can protest or implement whatever freedom of speech they want to after school. And I think that's our duty to make sure that we get the best out of our educational systems and hold them accountable for the taxpayer dollars they're utilizing. And the children should not be used for this. They need to be learning. And that's my thoughts. And I would make a motion to send House Bill 794 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Chairman. I will not be supporting that motion. My thoughts during this kept going back to my high school days and bring up some good memories. I remember we did a walkout because we didn't agree with the public school dress code that women weren't in our school. The women weren't allowed to wear Levi's, and we walked out at noon. And it was quite an enjoyable afternoon, as I remember. And I think at least I did. I won't speak to my other students that participated with me, but I know I learned more about civics and government and the proper way to address your concerns that afternoon. And when we went before the school board to express why we did the walkout, I know we learned more about government and how it should work in the democracy of the United States in that afternoon than I did the whole year in government class. So for that reason, I will not be supporting this motion.
I'm going to do a chair privilege, and I'm only going to do this because I've done it before. I would just like to remind the committee that the Constitution of the state of Idaho declares that we are a republic. And the purpose of education is to get young people educated so that they can maintain that Republican form of government. That's Article 9, Section 1. Let's not forget that. Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to support the motion either. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but what we think is good news in that Tinker doesn't apply is actually bad news. We are not talking about students' free speech rights in school. We're talking about their free speech out of school, where they are even freer. So in order to justify a restriction on that speech or explain our effective punishment of it, we have to articulate a significant state interest. I haven't heard one that's going to withstand constitutional scrutiny. For example, the court is going to ask, why is it okay for a student to quietly walk out of the classroom and get on a plane to Italy, but it's not okay for them to walk out into the park and peacefully assemble? We don't have a good answer to that question. We don't have a good answer to the question, why, in the backdrop of parental rights, are you taking this one away? If you look at page 1, line 27, this is a direct assault on parental rights, because what it says is, no school district, school, or teacher shall permit or grant excused absences. They don't now. I do. I excuse my children. So, and I'm not saying this is, necessarily good or bad. What I'm saying is, if we're going to take this right away from me, we have to have a good reason. And tinker is the floor for when the kids are in school, but it's not the floor when they're out of school. It's a much higher floor. And we haven't gotten there. So as I read this bill, and I understand what we're trying to do, but we can't just legislate, because we read some news articles. This is an assault on parental rights, and unless we can articulate a significant state interest in this restriction, which it is, because we are punishing parents and their children for exercising the freest of speech, this is not going to withstand constitutional scrutiny, and it's unconstitutional, and for that reason, I will not support it.
Representative Sauter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say on the record, I'm a believer in kids in seats. I'm also a believer in us showing up and sitting in our seats. I contacted all 3 of our District 1 school superintendents about this issue, and they believe in it too. It made me real happy to hear that. I never doubted it. They do not condone absences of any kind. It hurts on the bottom line, but most importantly, it hurts for student performance. They also reminded me that they do not look for additional reporting. They do not have any history with kids leaving school to participate in any protests. So I believe states in the southern part of our country have proven that students in seats leads to higher achievement. They've done that in the last couple of years, and I think it's just impressive that if we can just get kids to stay in their seats, they'll learn more. So my issue with this is that this bill adds reporting for something that the District 1 superintendents don't experience, they don't condone, and they don't allow. And something that hasn't been said is it also adds to our state rule promulgation, something that we every year try and cut the red tape in our state's regulations. And here we are adding to that burden and saying we will promulgate new rules to deal with this. So add to the burden for our school districts, whether it's a simple report or it takes more time, and add to the burden on the State Board of Ed to promulgate more rules. So for that, I'm a no.
Representative Mendive.
Thank you, Chairman. As a taxpayer, I actually pay to provide school for these students, and I expect them to be there. There's nothing anywhere that prevents them from after school hours to go out and protest about everything. No one's taken anyone's free speech rights away. This is just, we provide a public education for these students, and I expect them to be there. And so I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Representative Mathias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say I agree with Representative Mendive. I pay into the tax system to maintain a public school system, and I expect students to go to school. But that is not the question. The question is not whether we want kids to go to school. The question is, how do we explain to constitutional arbiters why we are punishing them for exercising free speech when we are not punishing them for doing anything else? It's not that we're saying this is right or wrong. We have to be able to explain why we are singling out free speech. And we have to say why that restriction serves a legitimate and significant state interest, and we haven't been able to do it. That's what makes this unconstitutional, not wrong.
Representative Hostetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see the constitutional issues. I see how you are reported absent in this bill.
Representative Handy.
I have some of the same memories as Representative Garner. We had a sit-down strike at lunchtime because we weren't going to get President's Day off the next Monday. And we sat there, we missed about 35 minutes of class. And then our vice principal came out. He was about 6'4", about 320 pounds, and suggested that we all go to class. And we did. But the way we felt by being able to express ourselves was still a very positive thing. And as I've listened to this debate back and forth, I say to myself, does this really need to be legislated? And I'm to the point now, this late in the session, it has to be an awful good piece of legislation to be better than no legislation. And I don't think this one reaches the muster, so I'll be voting against it.
Representative Nelson.
Request for roll call vote.
Properly before the committee to send to the floor with a due pass, House Bill 794 is before the committee.
Chairman Hawkins?
Yes.
Representative Handy?
No.
Mendive?
Yes.
Ehart?
Yes.
Vishnevsky?
Yes.
Garner?
No.
Nelson?
No.
Sauter? No. Merman?
Yes.
Pickett?
Yes.
Hostetler?
Yes.
Veely?
No.
Matthias?
No.
Galaviz?
No.
Motion dies on a tie. Chairman, take a second of privilege and just say, I know that some of these things are hard work, but I sometimes am baffled by what we think school is and isn't. You know, Idaho has an education directive that's embedded in our Constitution, Article 9, Section 1, and find out why we have education in Idaho. I think it's very important. And with that, we are done.